This is the story of the woman who knew too much about herself. There was a woman named Jennifer who had spent 15 years in therapy, read hundreds of self-help books, and attended countless workshops on personal growth. She could explain her childhood patterns, identify her attachment style, and analyze her dreams with impressive psychological insight. She had been to cognitive behavioral therapy, tried mindfulness meditation, explored family constellation work, and even spent a year in psychoanalysis. Her friends often came to her for advice because she seemed to understand human psychology so well. But despite all this knowledge, Jennifer found herself stuck in the same patterns. She still chose unavailable partners. She still struggled with anxiety in social situations. She still felt unfulfilled in her career. Frustrated by her lack of progress, she decided to try one more approach. She had heard about a therapist who worked differently, someone who didn't rely on traditional talk therapy methods. When Jennifer arrived for her first session, she came prepared. She had written a detailed history of her issues, complete with her own psychological analysis of their roots. She was ready to share her insights about her patterns and explain what she thought needed to be addressed. The therapist, an older woman with kind eyes, listened as Jennifer launched into her well-rehearsed self-assessment. "I know my abandonment issues stem from my father leaving when I was 7, Jennifer explained. "I have anxious attachment patterns that make me clingy in relationships. My perfectionism is clearly a defense mechanism from feeling not good enough as a child. I think what I need to work on is..." The therapist held up a gentle hand. "Before we continue, would you like some tea?" Jennifer was slightly annoyed by the interruption. She had come here to make progress, not to have a social tea break, but she politely agreed. The therapist brought out 2 cups and began to pour tea into Jennifer's cup. The tea filled to the brim, but the therapist kept pouring. Hot tea spilled over the edge, across the small table, and began dripping onto Jennifer's expensive therapy notes. "Stop!" Jennifer exclaimed, jumping up to save her papers. "The cup is full. You're making a mess." The therapist calmly set down the teapot and looked at Jennifer with gentle understanding. "Yes," she said quietly. "The cup is full, just like your mind." Jennifer stared at her, confused and a little angry about her soggy notes. The therapist continued, "You come to me with your cup completely full of explanations, diagnoses, and theories about yourself. You have an answer for everything, a label for every feeling, an analysis of every pattern. How can I help you discover something new when there's no room in your cup for anything fresh?" The words hit Jennifer like a physical blow. She realized that her vast knowledge about herself had become a prison. She had become so attached to her understanding of her problems that she couldn't see beyond them. "I know why I do everything I do," Jennifer said slowly. "But knowing hasn't changed anything." "Exactly," the therapist replied. "You filled your cup so completely with explanations that there's no space left for transformation. You can't discover who you might become because you're too busy defending who you think you are." In that moment, Jennifer saw something she had never noticed before. Her psychological knowledge hadn't freed her. It had trapped her in a story about herself that she kept repeating and reinforcing. She had become an expert on her own limitations, but a beginner at her own possibilities. "What if," the therapist asked gently, "you didn't know why you do what you do? What if you approached this session like someone who had never been to therapy before? What might become possible?" For the first time in years, Jennifer had no answer. And in that not knowing, she felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time. Curiosity about herself. "I don't know," Jennifer admitted. "I honestly don't know." The therapist smiled. "Perfect. Now we can begin." The Buddha taught that in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind, there are few. When we think we completely understand ourselves, our relationships, or our situations, we close off the possibility of genuine change. Think about areas of your life where you might have a full cup. Perhaps it's a relationship you've analyzed so thoroughly that you can predict every argument. Maybe it's a career path you've convinced yourself you understand completely, or patterns in your behavior that you've explained so well that you've stopped believing they can change. Jennifer's story reveals a common trap in our self-improvement culture. We become so knowledgeable about our problems that we become attached to having them. Our explanations become more important than our growth. We say things like, "I do this because of my childhood," or "I can't help it. It's just my personality," or "This is how I am in relationships." These statements feel insightful, but they often become limitations disguised as understanding. True wisdom often begins with admitting we don't know. When we empty our cup of assumptions about ourselves, we create space for new possibilities to emerge. This doesn't mean throwing away everything we've learned. It means holding our knowledge lightly, like tools we can use when helpful, rather than truths that define us. Jennifer discovered something profound that day. She had spent so much energy being right about her problems that she had forgotten to be curious about her potential. The Zen tradition speaks of don't know mind, approaching life with fresh eyes, free from the burden of having to understand everything. This isn't ignorance, but a willingness to be surprised by what we might discover. When we approach our relationships with don't know mind, we might see our partner differently. When we approach our work with empty cup awareness, we might find new sources of meaning. When we approach our challenges without prefixed explanations, we might find unexpected solutions. The therapist's overflowing teapot was a perfect metaphor. Just as the physical cup couldn't receive more tea while it was full, Jennifer's mind couldn't receive new insights while it was crammed with old explanations. But here's the beautiful paradox. The moment we admit we don't know, we become capable of learning again. The moment we empty our cup, we create space for transformation. This requires humility, the willingness to release our identity as someone who has it all figured out. For Jennifer, letting go of being the insightful one among her friends felt scary at first, but it also felt liberating. Tonight, as you think about your own life, notice where your cup might be full. Where have you become so certain about your limitations that you've stopped believing in your possibilities? What would happen if you approached one challenging area of your life with beginner's mind? What might become possible if you set aside what you think you know and approached it with fresh curiosity? The Buddha said, "Every moment is a fresh beginning." But we can only experience that freshness when we're not carrying the full cup of yesterday's conclusions into today's possibilities. Jennifer left that session with wet notes and an empty cup. For the first time in years, she didn't know exactly who she was or why she did what she did. And in that not knowing, she found something precious, the possibility of becoming someone new. As the Zen saying goes, you are perfect as you are, and you could use a little improvement. But first, you might need to empty your cup.